So I've done a lot of videos about Facebook ads so far, and I get a lot of questions from you guys about them. So I'm gonna answer as many of them as I possibly can today. I'm Wes McDowell, a web strategist for The Deep End, and this is the channel where I show you how to put your website to work for your business. So about a month ago, I did a Q&A style video about SEO, and you guys really seem to like it. So I get a lot of questions about Facebook ads as well. So let's just go ahead and dive into your Facebook ad questions. Okay, this one is from Stephanie Brown, and Stephanie says, I'm curious, I keep hearing that Facebook rewards videos, so to use videos in your ads. Would you suggest pictures or videos to use for a Facebook ad? So Stephanie, there's no hard and fast rule between video and photos. They do say that video tends to perform a little better, but it's not always the case. So what I like to do in a Facebook ad is actually choose 2 or 3 images that are kind of different from each other. You know, don't pick 2 or 3 that are very similar. Pick one that's a photo of a person. Pick one that's more of a vector-based illustration. And maybe one that's kind of more of a metaphor type image. And then what I want you to do is get a video as well. So what you're doing essentially is you're gonna run the same ad copy, the same text with a video and against the 3 other images. And then you're gonna test and you're gonna see which works best for your particular audience and to sell your particular message and or service. And I know that the thought of testing sounds very complicated, but Facebook's actually made it pretty easy now with a thing called dynamic creative. So basically you turn that on when you're setting your ad up, and it lets you input multiple different videos and images. Well, actually, let me back up. They won't let you test video against images. So what you would have to do is 2 different ad sets, one of a video, and then one where you're testing all the different images together. And you'll run those for, I recommend about 72 hours, just to let the algorithm do its thing and to see what's gonna perform best for you. Then you just turn your bad performers off and you crank up the ones that are actually working well. So I wish I had a definitive yes, use video, or no, you don't use video, but unfortunately, it's like anything else here, you gotta test it. All right, so the next question is from M. Watercress, and it says, if I upload a customer list to make a lookalike audience, what does Facebook do with my customers' data later? This is such a good question because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Ever since that Cambridge Analytica scandal, I feel like it's probably over a year ago by now. But basically, what this is referring to is there's such a thing in Facebook called a lookalike audience, where you basically upload your customer list or a list of email subscribers, and then you're telling Facebook, here's all the people that have proven to be a good audience for me. Figure out what they all have in common, and then go out and find more of those people, like a lot more of them. So what they do, what this person, M. Watercress, is wondering about is, what does Facebook do with that customer data? And the underlying question is, what are they going to do to my customers? Are they gonna start harassing them, sending them ads, all that kind of stuff? The answer is no, because all they're doing is they're basically cross-referencing all these email lists, all these email addresses with users they already have. So you're not like selling Facebook email addresses and giving them people they didn't have before. They're just saying, okay, they're basically looking at that spreadsheet, you know, like the bot is doing it, saying, okay, this is already a user, this person's not, so they throw that away. It's not like they go after that person in some way if they're not already a user. So the question, what does Facebook do with my customers' data later? They don't do anything because they already have all that data. Facebook has about, you know, anywhere between 200 and 1,000 data points on every single person based on everything that they do on Facebook and based on the websites they visit while they're logged into Facebook. So they know what your interests are, they know what kind of posts you're likely to engage with. And while this might sound creepy to people, and a lot of people do get the wrong idea about it, all it's really doing is it's matching people with things that are going to be the most interesting to them, which I would argue is a good customer experience for everybody. They get only served things that are relevant to them because they've already kind of raised their hand and said, I'm into this thing. And it's good for marketers too, because now we get to put our message in front of the people who it's most likely going to resonate with. Okay, and while we're on the subject of lookalike audiences, we've got another question regarding that well, this one actually came from several people, from Brad Gudum and Ed Berg, and a few other people asked a similar question, which is, can lookalike audiences be targeted down to a local geographic area? So in other words, I've got this customer list of 1,000 people on it. Can I have Facebook make me a lookalike audience of people that are just in Chicago or just in Denver or just in my little town? The answer to this is yes and no, because when you make a lookalike audience, it's basically in reference to a whole country. So if I've got that initial customer list, I can specify the country I want that new lookalike audience to be in, and I can specify how narrow or wide do I want it to be. Just to take a tangent here, so you can specify a lookalike audience of the top 1% of people that are the closest, all the way up to the top 10% of people that are closest. Obviously, that 10% audience is going to give you a bigger cross-section of people, but they're not as pinpoint accuracy targeted as the 1% list. The 1% list is obviously much more targeted, but a smaller audience. And it depends on how small your area is. So in other words, not all of California or not all of New York City where lots of people live. If it's a smaller area, what I would probably try to do first is do that 10% lookalike audience of the country. Then you want to layer in another element, another targeting element, which is based on geography. So what I would do is I would say I want a 10% lookalike audience of my list for the whole United States, but I also want you to only show my ad to the people on that list of probably about 20 million people. Take that list and shrink it down to only the people that live in Des Moines. By doing it that way, because if you were to go after that 1% lookalike audience, that's already only like about 2 million people. And then if you take those 2 million people and shrink it down to just Des Moines, now you're left with a really small population of people. So broaden it up a little bit by the 10% and you should be good to go. All right, and rolling right along on the lookalike audience question. So we've got from Garashtra Official, I hope I'm saying that right. It says, suppose I have a customer list of over 4,000 people. Do I need to update new customer data to Facebook regularly? Meaning, if my email list is growing or my customer list is growing, do I need to keep adding those people to my Facebook list for it to do its job? The answer is generally no, because what you want to do, you want to integrate your CRM or customer relationship management tool, which is basically collecting your email addresses. You want to integrate it with Facebook so it all happens dynamically behind the scenes. So let me give you an example. So let's say I have a lead magnet and I have MailChimp, where basically they're putting in their email address and then MailChimp is emailing them the lead magnet. Well, I can set it to where MailChimp automatically puts every new person that goes on my list onto that spreadsheet for Facebook for them to continually keep adding to that list so that that targeting list, that lookalike audience, keeps getting better and better over time. So I hope that made sense. So the next question comes from Family Budget Planning, and it says, how do you structure the retargeting ad after someone visits your website? How does Facebook send you a Facebook ad based on a website you just visited? I would like to know how to set this up. So there's asking two questions here. So for anyone who doesn't know about Facebook ad retargeting, basically the way it works is almost every website that does any kind of Facebook advertising installs a pixel on their website. They call it a pixel. Just think of it like a tracking device, basically, to where when you are logged into Facebook and you go to a website that has that tracking device pixel installed on it, Facebook then knows that you went to that website. And again, this all sounds very creepy, but it's not like an employee of Facebook is watching you do this. It's tracked so that way that business can then send an ad to you based on you expressing interest in that company. It's a really effective marketing tool. So that's how it works. The other question is, how do you structure the retargeting ad after someone visits your website? Now, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by how do you structure the ad, but basically when you're talking about a retargeting ad, you can be a little more direct response, a little more direct offer about it. In other words, when I'm doing a cold ad to a cold audience on Facebook, what you don't want to do is go right in for the sale. You don't want to go right in for the kill, like buy my products and services right away. That hardly ever works. People just have to kind of get to know you a little better before they're willing to be advertised to by you. So if I'm doing a cold ad to a cold audience, I generally tend to just advertise a piece of content or a lead magnet. That way they can go to the website, and then they can be tracked there, and then you can send a retargeting ad that way. So what I like to see for a retargeting ad is now you can get a little more direct response. You can show an offer to them. You can even do it based on certain pages they visited. So if they looked at a certain service, you can send them an offer that's just about that service. And another thing I like to do with a retargeting ad is to just move someone a little closer toward a sale, particularly if you have a higher ticket price point item. What I like to do for retargeting ads a lot is customer testimonials. And what works really well with this is that carousel style ad where you've got multiple videos or images with text for each, where each of those is a different customer testimonial. That can be really powerful. And the other thing I like to do with a retargeting ad is an FAQ video. So if you know someone's been to your site and they've been to a few pages, meaning they're pretty interested, now it's time to bust through objections. And the best way to do that is with FAQs. So basically, write down all the objections you think people likely have to going with your company, write them out as questions, and then the answers are basically your arguments or your rebuttals refuting those objections. So those are some of my best tips for retargeting ads. So good luck with that. The next one comes from P. Pugalia. Hope I'm saying that one right too. Do people read the large text chunk in ad copy? So basically I've done a few videos about Facebook ads, like writing the copy for it. And a lot of times people will go with really long form sales copy. And there's always a lot of infighting amongst marketers and advertisers. Like, do people actually read all that text? How much is too much? The answer actually is not many people will read all that, but guess who is going to read all that? The people that are interested in buying from you. And generally speaking, the higher your price point, the more convincing you're going to have to do to get people to click through. So what I would do again, it's an unsatisfying answer, test. Do 2 different versions of the ad, write out a longer form with like lots of broken up text and bullet points and all that kind of stuff. Use emojis. Those work really well to break up the content as well. Then do a second version where you've edited it way down, and then just see what works best. And the next one is from David Cantero, and David says, which objective is best to optimize for? So basically, I don't know if you don't know, when you run a Facebook ad, there are different objectives or different goals you can choose. One of which is just getting likes, which I never recommend. One is traffic, where basically the goal is just to get people to your website. That works really well if you're basically just wanting people to read a blog post so that you can retarget them or anything like that later. The other one is conversions, which is basically you're optimizing, you're telling Facebook, I want the kind of people who are not only going to go to my website, but they're going to do whatever action I want them to do there, whether that's fill out a form. So this sounds like a no-brainer, right? You obviously would want to go with the conversions because that's the more valuable action. Well, while that's technically true, there is a reason why maybe you want to back out a step, and I'll tell you why. Because in order for Facebook's algorithm to do its job, which the algorithm's job is basically to start analyzing who's clicking, who's performing the actions, and then optimizing to go out and get more people and show the ad to more people that are like the people that are doing that particular action. The problem with that is they need about 50 instances of that a week for the algorithm to learn from. Any less than that, and it's not really getting enough data to ever get any better. So let's say your objective or your conversion goal is you want people to schedule a consultation on your website, okay? If you're not getting 50 of those a week, if that's not happening 50 times a week, then they're not going to be able to optimize for that goal. So what you'd be better off doing in that case is to back out a step to where you are getting 50 a week. Meaning if that's just traffic, if that's just getting people to your website, then that can be a goal. So always go with the best goal you can where you get at least 50 of them happening every week. All right, moving right along. The next one is from Evan L. And this one says, is dynamic creative a good replacement for split testing? So remember how I told you before, Dynamic creative is where they allow you to upload different images or different headlines, all in the same ad set, to where they kind of just test them against each other on their own, so you don't have to upload all these different ads. And of course, split testing is just basically the art of throwing up different versions of something and seeing what performs better. So the old way was people would put up, 5 to 10 completely different ads, and they would maybe just change one thing about each. So they would be almost all the same, except for, different headlines or different images in all of them. But now you can basically create all these different permutations dynamically using dynamic creative. So is it a good replacement for split testing? Here's what I will say. If you don't have the stomach for true split testing, like if you're not really good at it or you don't really know what you're doing, yes, it's the next best thing. Is it quite as good? Not really. But the average marketer, the average small business owner isn't really going to want to take the time to do proper split testing. Here's why it's not quite as good. Because Facebook tends to jump to conclusions a little too quickly sometimes. Let's say you just have one ad that has 3 different images and 3 different headlines. And they're kind of coming up with all these combinations of them on the fly to show to different people. A lot of times, Facebook will way too prematurely decide, okay, this one's the winner, this one's outperforming everyone else, when really they should have given it more time to really be able to tell, to where you get statistically significant number of people looking at all the different combinations. And that's getting a little nerdy, I know, but hopefully you understood most of that. So yeah, if you're not gonna go through split testing in the traditional sense, go with dynamic creative. It is the next best thing. Is it 100% great? No, but it's better than just not testing at all. All right, so the next one comes from Josh, and it says, generally, how much does each Facebook lead cost? I've looked everywhere on the internet, can't find how much one costs. Josh, there's really I can't even pinpoint this down much at all. It depends on so many factors. Depends on how good your ad is. First of all, if you have a really bad ad, it's gonna be really high, right? And if you get any at all. It also has to do with how good you get your targeting down too. So a lot of people get their targeting all wrong. And a lot of this has to do with using just pure interest-based targeting. So let's say if you sell, dog supplies and you try to target people who have dogs as an interest. That can mean a lot of things. That can mean they actually have a dog and love their dog. That could mean they once clicked like on a picture of their friend's dog. So there's a lot of ways interest-based targeting can go wrong and drive your costs up. So really, when we're talking about how much does a lead cost, I'll try to narrow this down a little bit. It's not going to be good, but I've heard people getting leads as low as, under $1. I've heard that goes all the way up to over $50 per lead. Let's just imagine for a second that your ad is amazing and your targeting is amazing. Beyond that, the offer has to be right. It has to be in, generally, the higher ticket your item is or your service is, the higher it's going to cost to get a lead, versus if you're giving away a free lead magnet, that's going to cost a lot less. Because think about it, a lot fewer people need to see that ad to be talked into something for free, versus something, let's say you have a $5,000 coaching program, a lot more people are going to have to see that ad before you get one as a lead. But in terms of, with a lead magnet, they generally say anywhere from $1 to $8 is a good cost per lead. So I know that's a little vague, but hopefully it somewhat answers your question. All right, so the next one comes from Scott Leadbeater. What is the difference between lead ads and using a landing page to get customer details? So this is in reference to a video I made on lead ads specifically, which a lead ad is, so if you have a lead magnet, like a checklist or an ebook or an audio training or anything like that, what it allows you, a lead ad allows you to do is basically set up a Facebook ad that when they click on the ad, they don't have to leave Facebook to get it. They click a button and it pops up with their name and their email address. Because Facebook already has that information, all they have to do is click confirm. That talks with your CRM, like your Drip or MailChimp, to automatically send it. And they never had to leave Facebook, which is great because Facebook generally charges a lot less for that, because you're keeping the people where Facebook wants them to be, which is still on the platform, versus taking them off of it. So what's the difference between doing that and doing it the traditional way where the Facebook ad, you would click the button and they would go to your landing page to opt in for it there. Like I say, you're paying less generally because Facebook wants them to stay on Facebook. The other thing is you're reducing a lot of the friction that comes with taking someone to a landing page. You're basically eliminating that factor of what if my page loads slowly and the friction of them having to input their own information, which isn't a huge deal, but basically the cost savings I find to be the best part. There is some discussion about whether or not the quality of the lead is as good when you're getting them on a Facebook lead ad versus going, basically if they have to go to your website, that might end up being a more qualified lead in the end. The other disadvantage to a Facebook lead ad, I think, is you control the experience a lot less. So if you have a really good landing page with a lot of really good persuasive content and images and copy and all that good stuff, you might even have a video that's trying to sell it, that might be a little more persuasive and more compelling to someone to actually download your lead magnet. It really depends on what it is you're trying to get them to opt in for and who your audience is and what they're willing to do. So again, it's about testing, but I love the idea of Facebook lead ads. I think it's a really good way to save a little bit of money and save people's time as well. Okay, the next question comes from Sarah Ulp. And she says, I'm a wedding and portrait photographer and I recently moved to a pretty small town surrounded by lots of other small towns. I used to have no problem booking all year round, but this is a totally new area for me and don't know hardly anyone. Any tips for Facebook ads for something like this? I'm currently running spring family specials. I created what I think is a great ad with spot on targeting, but have only booked 2 families so far. Okay, Sarah, so what I normally recommend is to basically warm up a cold audience by giving them content and then letting an email campaign take over the show. So basically you get them on your list with this lead magnet, then you start emailing them promotions and helpful content week after week. However, I don't know that I recommend it in your case. If you live in a small town, your reach is already pretty limited. So what I might recommend instead is a more direct response offer style ad. But here's the thing. It's not just enough to have an offer and say we have a family special. You need to have a deadline to it. And what I would do, just to keep things ethical, because what you don't want to do is run a special that says, oh, it expires this Friday. Then the next week you have the same ad that expires this Friday. What I would want you to do is probably come up with 3 or 4 different promotions and run them in a cycle. So basically this week you're running this promotion, it ends on Friday. Next week, do the next promotion and that ends on Friday. What you're doing here is you are using scarcity to your advantage. It is a tactic that works because what happens is when people are presented with an offer and there's no reason for them to act quickly, what they end up doing is putting it off. I'll do it next week. I'll do it the week after that, to where they end up never doing it. So that's why scarcity is a really valuable tool when you're marketing. In terms of the ad itself, what I would want you to do is probably test one video ad that's kind of a behind the scenes video about how you work with a family with a great headline that gives all the details about the actual promotion for that week. And the other style ad I want you to test is, remember how I said earlier about a carousel testimonial ad? So basically you're gonna run a carousel ad with each different thing in the carousel being a different testimonial from a different family. These can either, I would probably make them be the family portrait that you take because people are gonna judge you based on your work. So use the family portrait for each, and then under each one, the headline should be like a really snappy little pull quote of that testimonial from that customer. And then you can use web emojis to simulate that 5-star review. So try that and let me know how that works out. I'd be interested to know. All right, the next question comes from Paul Hardingham, and he says, do mobile viewers convert as well as desktop? So Paul, this one's actually kind of easy. So basically what ends up happening on mobile, people tend to click through to ads more because they're bored, they're out, they're just kind of clicking through stuff. They do tend to convert better on desktop usually. Now, of course, it's going to depend on the specific circumstances and what it is you're selling. But generally, people tend to wait to buy things or download things on their actual desktop versus on their phone. Okay, the next one is from Victory Gymnastics, and it says, is there any way to target people who have commented under certain videos? Can you cherry pick those people who've expressed interest in a subject, make up a list with their names and target them? No, you can't do that. This is one of those things that I think people think Facebook, when people talk about how shady Facebook is, I think this is what they're picturing. They're picturing Facebook kind of selling people out, selling their names and their information. It doesn't really work that way. You can only target kind of general broad terms and interests and things that people like, demographics, that kind of stuff. And you actually can upload your own customer list as well. So if you had a spreadsheet of your customers, you could upload that list because you own that list. But what you can't do is tell Facebook, put my ads in front of these profiles that I've found. You can't do that. One workaround is you can, like if you find that there's a channel with videos that you want to target people who are watching those videos, you definitely can target people who like that page. And then you can always layer on other things like certain demographics. You can say people who like this page who are female between 25 and 35, general things like that. Hopefully that helps. All right, next one is from Christian Cabahug, and he says, is it true that adding words such as like, share, comment, or tag in your caption is not allowed in Facebook ads and may lower your reach? I do believe that that is true. Facebook really doesn't want you to do anything where you're asking for those kind of engagements. It's a little spammy. I'm not exactly sure if that's like against terms of service or not, but I do know this much. Facebook does have filters in place where they will see certain words that they know to either have a real human being look at to review, or it could be as severe as, these are just not allowed to be used, and I don't really know, but I wouldn't do that anyway. What you want is to start conversations. You want to actually get people to really engage with the post, not just to like it or share it or tag someone in it. So what I would say instead is ask a relevant question and have them just leave a legitimate response underneath it. That kind of engagement is going to move the needle much more than just those really shallow, having people like your post or just anything like that. So ask a question and get comments that way. Well, that's all the questions I've got this time around, but go ahead and leave your questions below and I'll try to get to them in the next video if I possibly can. So in the meantime, learn more about Facebook ads in either of these videos. I'm Wes McDowell for The Deep End, and I'll see you right there.